A very warm welcome to Our Heritage. I'm Sherwood McCaskey, as always. Thanks for joining us. You know, as a people, we have quite a lot to celebrate. An increasing number of us has been writing and publishing our work for the enjoyment of all. This week on Our Heritage, we have traveled to the northern stretch of the sheltered northwestern bay here in Barbados, 6 months to be exact, to celebrate with the Gilts brothers, who will share their passion for and that journey of sea, water, and sand, a collection of poems. How did the name come about?
The title came about while walking Maiden Road one morning. I was thinking about a theme that would encompass the elements that inspired us growing up. And the thing that inspired us mostly was the sea. Because we were born on Six Mills Beach, grew up on Six Mills Beach, and in Barbados there was something known as the coastal culture of Barbados, where we had a different type of culture than the people who live inland. When we tell people about things like playing sandball war, and about diving sea plates, and about running home to help offload fishing boats with the flying fish, and to eat fisherman's grub, which was the food that the fishermen cooked at sea back in that day. And we grew up with this sort of this culture. So the name Seawater and Sand came straight to me. At the time, I didn't even realize that somehow in the back of my mind also was the calypso, All We Have is Sea, Water and Sand, which was sung by the Chalk Dust, right? And when I thought about it, I said, you know something, it's not the same exact sentiment that Chalk Dust was putting over, but it's a similarity in that we were so much influenced by the sea, water and sand growing up in Six Mills. And when I look at the poems that we were putting together, they had this common thread where the influence of the sea, water, and sand was always there. So I decided, well, this is the perfect name for it, Sea, Water, and Sand. You know, and it was catchy. It was catchy. I mean, the calypso name was catchy, so I figured this would be just as good. Some of the poems are probably over 10 years old, but then there are more recent ones as well. You would appreciate the fact that when we first went into this pandemic in 2020, and there were the lockdowns, famous lockdowns, there was not much to do because you were shut in the house. So there was a lot of time to write and to read and to create stuff.
And to review work.
And to review some old work as well, right. And most of the work of the book was done during that time, during when we had the lockdowns. Most of the work was done. I contacted our publishers, which is Wendell Callender and his wife Margot. I contacted them. They are the XL1 Publishing, and I spoke to Wendell about the project, and he liked the idea, and he said to me, I can work with you. Me and Margot are going to work with you. We're going to work with you and your brother, and we're going to help this thing come to reality. So after I secured the funding from the NCF, and I must say thank you to the National Cultural Foundation for their assistance in getting this publication out. We decided that, you know, this is where we want to go, and that the inspiration of the poems, as I said, was growing up in Six Mills over the period of time. But then the reality of the pandemic and some of the stuff that we would have experienced. So you'll find that one or two of the poems in the book was written during that period and would reflect that in the body of the work where we wrote.
We must also pay some tribute to some individuals. In the 1970s, when Frank and I started to experiment with words and rhythms, my father paid, I don't remember how much it was, I think it was $30, $15 each, to send us to Yoruba Foundation, Yoruba House on Fondabel on Sunday mornings. It was a workshop being done there with Timothy Callender and Bruce St. John. And we attended that workshop where we got a lot of guidance from those individuals, and where we met other poets We met the late Ricky Paris, Michael Rashid Foster, Kojo Carter, and one or two others, and built some relationships with those individuals who over the years then we started to attend Southern Africa Liberation Committee freedom marches through Bridgetown with Free Nelson Mandela. You know, it was the period of the whole black power, black consciousness thing in the 70s, in the early 80s. So that has helped to influence a lot of us, and especially Frank and I, coming from the North, because there was nobody in the North at the time that was doing what we were doing.
Recognizing the good work of Yoruba Yard is a celebration of Elambe Monthly. How is Elambe regarded by the two gentlemen?
Great man, Elambe. I would have first heard the name Elambe while I was at school. In my late years at Community High School, which is located on Barbary Hill, the Nation newspaper had just started being published. It just came out once a week on Wednesdays. And it would have some articles in it about certain things that were happening in Barbados at the time, and once or twice the name Elambe Monthly would appear in the paper. With traditional dashikis and combat hair, beard, looking very radical. And a lot of us used to idolize Elambe. And going then to Yoruba on Sunday mornings, although we were not members as such of Yoruba, going there was to me like almost like going to a university. And then meeting people like Timothy Callender, who was a well-known short story writer, and Bruce St. John. And because we not only started at Yoruba with Bruce St. John and Timothy, after leaving Yoruba, after that course was finished, we used to meet in Hunt Street off Baxter's Road at Michael Foster's home. Alternately, Bruce St. John and Timothy Callender would turn up there on Sunday mornings, and we would have our sessions there as well. But Yoruba, I think that Yoruba, the presence of Yoruba in Barbados, at a time when people were discussing whether Barbadians had a culture or not. Strange enough, you had certain people of a particular strata, coming from a particular strata of society, who would argue that we didn't have a culture. We were British. You know, while persons like Elambe and those other persons would say, no. Our culture is basically African, but it has been suppressed. You understand? So, big persons like Elambe would have had great influence in helping to turn the tide of things in Barbados, and helping to shape what we have now, which a lot of people take for granted. I remember when I used to wear my dashikis here in 6 months, people used to laugh at me and call me mad. I met a young lady, well, she's not so young now, but I met a young lady some months ago who was asking me if I know of the fella that used to live in 6 months, who used to walk around wearing these long gowns, these long dashikis and that kind of thing. If he went mental or something like that. And I started to laugh. I said, who are you talking about? You're talking about me. You understand? Because in that day, those things, and Elambe was the person who you could credit for having introduced people back to themselves in Barbados at a time when it was not popular or even quote unquote sensible to do it. Yeah, as a matter of fact, there were times when we would read poetry in the North and persons would cough and laugh. At one time I didn't want to read anything in the North. I prefer to read Bridgetown when we have these rallies at the steel shed and so on. It was people in that area were probably more appreciative of poetry And then again, you can't really blame them, because what we were taught at school as Portuguese was, for want of a better term, damn foolishness.
Since then, it's become popular now. And to the point where we follow the North American trend and we celebrate
Black
History Month in February. You understand? And I have often asked the question, why do we need a Black History Month in Barbados?
You don't need it.
You know, I can understand it in America, because America has been called, just like Barbados was colonized too, but you have a large white population, large European population. You have the almost non-existent now indigenous Americans, and you have the African people who were taken to America. So I would understand that in that context, they would need something to sort of bind them together and to bring them back to their own reality of the type of culture and the type of history that they would have had. But in Barbados, where we are predominantly African people, I don't see the need for a Black History Month. We should be teaching what we teach at schools and do during the month of February. We should be doing 365 days a year. There's no need for Black History Month in Barbados. You understand? We don't need that. We should be doing it every single day of the year.
Well said, my brother. It is time now for us to get to the beautiful poetry that was inspired by the environment and their circumstances.
I think my favorite poem in the book is Ghost Whispers. It's a pretty long poem. I'm not going to read any part of it. People will have to buy the book and read it. But Ghost Whispers seeks to pay homage to the original people. It's in two parts. It seeks to pay homage to the original people who occupied Barbados, and especially this stretch of West Coast. Many people might not know, but Sixmans actually got its name from the sighting of 6 original inhabitants sailing away from the coastline in a canoe. They were sighted sometime early after the 1627 settlement. And the Englishmen who were sailing up the coast saw these 6 men in a canoe sailing away and called it the Sixmans Bay. And that is recorded in Stromberg's History of Barbados, which was published, I think, 1848, somewhere around there. And as I said, the first part of the poem seeks to pay homage to those individuals and the later African people who came. But the second part is personal. The second part is my personal experience growing up, what we did along the coast, picking sea grapes and going for dunks, raiding Hayward's coconut orchard and playing sandball war, diving sea plates and so on. The poem I'm going to share is, some may think is out of character, because most people may know me reading pretty radical stuff, but I'm going to share a poem that is not radical. This is called Ever Since We Were Teens. Times change, and I've watched with timid awe life's unfolding surprises. The shattered promises, twists and turns that haunt my silences, like aborted poems on discarded sheets of paper, and an unfulfilled need that finds me sometimes still thinking of you silently from the distance, like I've done ever since we were teens. Now this quiet reach, despite the years so far removed from a touch, a kiss I've never known, I search for solitude in the memory of your deep dark eyes, your voice, your smile. In the shrinking shade of the years between that distant time and the present, I've been hounded by a million fears, dreams, and voices that I still do not understand. Time and circumstances were cruel sculptors of this life, my dear. Sunset has once more left me wondering and thinking of you still, silently from this distance, like I've done ever since we were teens.
I know I mentioned earlier about the period of the lockdown during the pandemic and so on. And I remember the morning I woke up and outside was dark. And I discovered that we were facing another crisis. We had ash coming from the volcanic eruption in St. Vincent. And I was like, what's happening? Why is this happening to us? I mean, it's one thing after the next, you know? And the second morning after I thought about it, I got up that morning and I wrote this poem, It's Dark. It is dark, but I can see. I can see the ocean covered by a cloud of dust, volcanic ash. So we must cover eyes and mouth from this volcanic spew. Who would have thought or knew just last week we were battling a pandemic? Then sudden saw this seismic turn of events erupted, awakening a mountain that while we were sleeping sent black dust falling like rain on backs, on roofs, blowing from Vinci-land cross gray skies already infused with Sahara dust. I trust we soon emerge from this scourge inflicting us. We must now rise from this ash, claim our glory in time as the darkness and dust dissipate, leaving us to contemplate the island's connectivity with family, the closeness linked by sea, the sky draped by plumes of sputum from soufre's belch and cough. This giant standing aloft stretches across the ocean to bring her dust-forming crust on roadways and side streets, releasing her energy into space as we face this crisis in crisis. It is no longer dark, but gray, and I am left to wonder, when will it go away?
I think poetry for me has been therapeutic. I don't know where it comes from. I have ceased asking the question, where did it come from? I just accept that it comes. I sleep with a pen and a notepad near my bed, and I've been doing that for years. Because sometimes at night between sleep and wake, something happens and if you don't get up and jot down something, and you say, okay, I'll remember in the morning, it never happens. So I've found in my dark days, in my joyful times, poetry has been a way of releasing thoughts, feelings, and so on. Yeah? Some people listen to music because I find it therapeutic to write. There are some poems that I've written that nobody will ever see. At least I don't think so. Perhaps when I'm gone, he survives. He may think of, but there are certain poems that I've written that nobody will ever see. Not by me, at least.
I want to say too that, it is not a usual thing. We have, throughout the world, you find that there are families who share common talents. And especially if you look at Hollywood, you see that there are actors, families, right, where the brothers are all actors or whatever, right? You think of people like Emilio Estevez and Martin Sheen and those people. In Barbados, they are sports people. There are families who are involved in sports. You have the cricketing families. You have cricketing families where the father used to play cricket, the son played cricket, that sort of thing. But I don't think that there are any other two brothers in Barbados who are poets. So I think we are unique in that way. And we actually started writing together. We used to write, sometimes to produce a poem, we do it together. We used to stay up at night. We used to stay up, and we would. I would write one line. I would come up with a line, and then he would come with the next line, and then we would do it like that, line by line, till we got a poem. And in a lot of cases, when it ends, it looked if it one body wrote the poem. But then we discovered after doing those creative writing classes at Yoruba, one of the things that we discovered is that we had separate voices. Whereas we were saying similar things, he wanted to say them one way and I wanted to say them another way. So we said, okay, but this is how it's supposed to be. So the poems kind of mesh and kind of complement each other, but at the same time with separate voices, our own individual voices, which I admire a lot, because that is the way how a poet should be. You should be able to identify your own voice in writing. And yes, it's therapeutic because you find that you can get lost sometimes in writing. You can get lost, but not in a negative way. You get lost where you feel a comfort, a sort of comfort in writing. And when you write something and you, at the end of writing this piece, and you look back at it, you don't always accept what it is or what it says at that point in time, because you always decide that you'll put it one side, and then next day you look at it again. And then you might want to change a line, a word, or whatever. You say, well, this line don't really say exactly what you want, and then you just go back to it and you try to emphasize more on the imagery and so on.
What about their legacy? How are they ensuring that others are influenced by their creativity and good work? How are they giving back to society? How are they embracing the younger generation?
Well, I think we have always worked with young people. We have always worked with young people in helping to nurture the work. A couple of years ago, we used to run, my brother and I used to run a creative writing class, which was patterned after the same class that we did at Yoruba. We used to run it at the community center in Spikestown, and we had a few students there as well. But I even about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I received a call from a friend in St. Lucia who introduced me to this youngster, and he said to me, this youngster is writing poetry and he needs somebody to help him, you know, along the way. And he called me from St. Lucia to introduce the guy to me. He said, well, the only poet that I really know is these brothers from Barbados, and they will call you. So I was able then to introduce him to some St. Lucian poets. And I said to him, well, I don't mind, you know, I will help you in any way I can, but you can reach out to these guys as well because they're in St. Lucia. So I gave him the names of 2 St. Lucian poets who he could refer to, you know. So you get that happening because I have done readings in St. Lucia as well. I've done a national reading in St. Lucia at their national library some years ago, and I work with the St. Lucia Writers Forum, right. I also did some work with an online group in Tobago, which is Mood Writers, and they have an online Facebook page, which I am a member of. And although I don't know these guys personally, they're the young people, and they usually refer or send stuff to me to edit or review for them. So I've been doing that for quite a while too. So not only within Barbados, but I've reached out within the Caribbean and doing that as well. As we said earlier, the book is dedicated to our mom and dad. My dad was a very strong figure in our lives. I firmly believe that Barbadian society would be a better society if we had more fathers like my father. You understand? And anybody that knew my father, Stanley Jilts, will tell you that. And this poem is some memories of him, and it's called My Dad. My dad would read to us bedtime stories at night. Mornings were punctuated by pillow fights and nicotine kisses as we entered the light. I would watch him shave, his silver razor exploring across jaw, revealing a strong face without flaw. Maybe a nick or two that razor's edge was sure to do. But he never flinched. He never flinched nor 1 inch or 2. My dad and the things he used to do. My dad would often tell of my baby days, shouting again, again, as he tossed me in the air. Within his arms, I had no fear, and that is true of all the things my dad would do. My dad would put us on his back as he breaststroke through the sea. This was fun for me, gliding through the water like Aquaman, then diving down to sand, walking from the beach, dad and 2 sons in hand. Paternal love so true was the things my dad used to do. I miss my dad, now he's gone, but his memory will always live on. And that father's love I knew, especially as I recall the things my dad used to do.
This one is called No Road Map. There was no road map to the happiness I have known ever since we met. No signposts, no red, amber, and green to the tease of your kisses and the fireworks kaleidoscopic display of colors and cosmic music when you came.
During lockdown, we missed a lot of things because we couldn't do, you know, personal exercise, couldn't do certain things, you couldn't go and do certain things. So I wrote this one called Missing You. Oh, how I miss your soothing touch, your blissful voice. Oh, how I miss your all-embracing kiss. The way you wrapped around and held me close. The way you pulled me in to what I needed most. The wetness, into the shallow of your being. No longer seeing, but hearing your beckoning call to merge myself within your wall of what we form and feel you touch me once again. So soothing and easing of the pain, longing so much for your sweet, salted touch. Kiss me, let me enter your wet cavity of tropical marine bliss. Let the memory linger of that final hug and kiss. If you ever leave me, I don't know where I'll be. Can't you tell by now? I am dreaming of the sea.
Well, with my copy in hand, we walk away from the beach here at Six Men in St. Peter and continue our celebration with the Jilts brothers of their publication of Sea, Water and Sand, a collection of poems. I'm Sherwood McCaskey. Thank you, brothers. This has been Our Heritage, Sea, Water and Sand.